Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this evening of the School of Love, Series 2, Love in Action. I would like to begin with the threefold coherence with heart breathing. Threefold coherence with heart breathing. So let us begin with setting the intention of stillness in the heart. Placing a hand on the heart, another hand on the belly. Let the heart rest on the power of the belly. Now focus on your heart and breathe as if you're breathing with your heart, because this is actually what is meant to be happening. Breathing with your heart. Now bring to mind an image or memory of something that gives you a sense of stillness. Perhaps a still pond or a still sky. Something that opens up a sense of stillness. And feel that stillness between the beats of the heart. A sense of deep stillness within yourself. Feeling that stillness within your heart, your belly, and your mind. Just staying connected to that stillness as you bring yourself back to outer awareness. Connecting inner stillness with outer stillness. And we will begin this session, which is the fourth session of the second series. So we're actually at the midpoint of the 7 sessions. And so it's a good idea to take a moment to look back to see what we've covered so far. You could say to do a review or a rukshao of the past, as we learned about in the last session, rukshaos, before going barreling ahead into more new information, and dare I say more revelation of new information. I say revelation because ultimately true knowing includes an element of revelation and is not strictly a matter of extracting and assembling information and building monolithic structures of knowledge, the way we treat information and knowledge these days. For example, we consider Googling something the way to access answers. All the knowledge we ever need is all there, stored digitally, and all we have to do is Google it, right? Everything's being organized digitally for our immediate access. In the not-so-distant past, it was libraries that were looked upon as the monolithic structures of knowledge, storing information neatly, according to the Dewey Decimal System, or some such system, as we learned probably back in grade school. But where do we ever discuss the activity of knowing? Because knowing takes place only in the knower, not in the library, and not on the internet. We have forgotten the roots of knowing and have little interest in the subject of epistemology, which is about the nature of knowledge itself, what it is, how it's accessed, what are its limits, if there are any. So in the last session, we looked at how the inner state of a subject, that being you, determines the relationship to an object, something outside of you, and how, as Rudolf Steiner claims, it is only when there is an elevated form of love within ourselves as a subject that an object will fully disclose its true nature to us. Otherwise, we are more just looking at the external form, the outer manifestation of things, or just bringing what we already know or think what we know about something, but not actually connecting to the inner essence, the unmanifest aspect or beingness behind an object. And that is, for the most part, the current state of our science, at least until it evolves into a spiritual science, where access to knowledge is not so reliant on our senses or technology that acts as an extension of our senses, but returns to recognizing the latent technology within the human being itself, and that when the human awakens to this latent technology, or to put it into the context of this session, to become active with the energetic organs, then we'll be able to access knowledge of a deeper nature and organize it with our organs. And when the inner disposition is a higher love, an elevated love, one that has transformed the lower aspects into something higher, that is to say, taken the animal instincts and desires, which we spoke of in session 1, and brought them to a new place in empowering the human nature, then we will really see the building of our individualness, which can then join with other individuals in building the one body of love, as spoken of in the first series, as envisioned in the epistles of the Apostle Paul. And to just recap the previous sessions, we looked at how we can gain greater mastery over our desires, these things that we share with the animals, by working with the 4 Ds, putting decisions before desires. Putting decisions before desires, then letting desire work with the decision. Then following through with the details, that's the 3rd D, and finally the delivery of the intention. That was in session 1 of this 2nd series. In session 2, Love is Listening, we looked at how we can put love into action by the way we hold space with another, and that there can be a perfecting of our love by cleaning up our communication and clearing out the space of all our communication stoppers, which are really process stoppers, stopping the other's process because we egotistically think we know what is best for the other person. And so we fill the space with our words rather than learning to hold silence, the pregnant pause, asking open-ended questions to prompt the other's knowing and help birth the other's wisdom, because love is listening. In the previous session, session 3, Love is Learning, we looked at the place and power of love to act as a bridge between ourselves as a subject and anything outside of us as an object we wish to connect with, to know more about. In other words, how love can be an agency in getting perceptions of things that are closer to the truth, closer to the whole picture, not just a partial picture, not a half-truth or a distortion of reality. In other words, that love allows us to penetrate through the veil of Maya, the illusions of life that surround us on all sides. And people struggle with this, which is evident in their struggle with perception. A lot of people struggle with perception. Why? Because their perceptions are often governed by their sympathies and antipathies, their personal tendencies, the things they like or don't like, things that are attracted to or repelled by. And these are all of an entirely personal nature, these sympathies and antipathies. No two people have the same set of sympathies and antipathies. And it's not that these are wrong or bad. We actually need them in order to survive. But they get in the way of knowing the things outside of us. We are running into ourselves as we try to enter into the world of learning and knowing, because we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. So love is the answer in terms of coming to a place of empathy rather than being in sympathy or antipathy. So in essence, we need to clean up our feeling sense realm. And this is all part of the process of perfecting our love, the perfecting of our love. It is so that we can turn our feeling realm, which is often still governed by our desires, the innate impulses put into us by the stars, into something that is capable of clean, clear empathy. So through a purified feeling realm, we can feel what the other feels, know what the other knows, share in their experience, and thereby broaden our own range of experiences. And I like to call this holy knowing. This is holy knowing. That is the education, the educare, that leads us into wholeness. Bringing the seed of love within us into manifestation, lambano, the Greek word taught in Series 1. To receive this seed of love into manifestation which is an education, it's a leading out, which will lead to holy knowing. Broadening the way we learn this way, sorting through our sympathies and antipathies, will open the way to a true higher education. Without addressing the way you function as a student of life, you are actually in danger of limiting your development, of the development of your omnidirectional comprehension, and thereby in danger of remaining spiritually naive. Spiritual naivety, rampant. I also want to state the obvious by pointing to the importance of study. Study as a means to prime the pump for this holy knowing. Let me explain holy knowing a bit more, what that is. The word holy, H-O-L-Y, as in holiness, is related to the word whole, W-H-O-L-E, as in wholeness, and both are related to the root word for health, health. So health is related to wholeness, being made whole, which is what really produces holiness. So what I'm saying here is about study is that it produces wholeness, which leads to holy knowing, which leads to health. So study should really be considered a sacred activation, a sacred activity, and an integral part of any path of development that is intended to lead to healthy wholeness, holiness, and to wholly knowing something. Wholly knowing. This is because any true activity of learning will include both the linear, logical, straight-ahead manner of acquiring thoughts, the Greek word phronema, thoughts, which I spoke of in Series 1, but will also include lateral, intuitive acquisition of ideas. And this balanced approach will circumvent some of the problems with modern education, where the objective is more to fill buckets rather than light fires, to quote the title of a book, where students are treated as receptacles of facts. Just facts, facts, facts. What do you get? All fact up. Instead, with a balanced approach, balance between the linear and the lateral, the acquisition of phronema, thoughts, will have a beneficial and building effect on the nous. That's the Greek word for mind. The healthy, solid thoughts, the phronema, will build a healthy nous, a healthy mind. Heart mind, the core of you. And this balanced approach will develop the mind's ability for omnidirectional knowing, holy knowing, and lead to the often misunderstood access to genius, which is everyone's birthright. Genius, to be connected to the genesis, the source, and guided by the GPS of the universal field, which includes using the moral compass of the heart, which we'll be looking at in this session very shortly. So there is a way into knowing that will produce wholeness and balance, as knowledge fills in aspects of your being that need to be built, that need to be filled in, missing bits. Otherwise, as we know from ancient wisdom, knowledge can puffeth up. It can puffeth up. It can inflate our ego, make us egotistical. But when love is involved, we get edified. Love edifies. If our learning is done in a way that includes the heart's intelligence, we will be edified, built up, instead of inflated. And when it comes to studying, just another note on studying, such as reading books, going to lectures, watching informative videos, it is a way to prime the pump for holy knowing. But eventually you will need to be able to wean off the path of book learning, to wean oneself off of that and listening to the so-called authoritative voices of others. And learning to listen to your own thoughts, your own insights, and your own revelations. And in fact, maybe writing your own book, which is partly what I'm doing here. So when we work less taking things in through the senses in the head, then we end up getting the head out of the way. We get the head down off its authoritative pedestal and into listening with the heart, using more of our emotional intelligence and cultivating the powers of the feeling realm. In fact, I'd like to give an exercise for cultivating this intelligence of the feeling realm. An exercise that leads to the education, the leading out of the feeling realm. Because we need to lead out these powers of the feeling realm. Unfortunately, many of us have had their feelings shoved back. Shoved back so badly, not let out, but shoved back so badly, we don't know the difference between a feeling and a flutter. So the exercise is this. It's something given by Rudolf Steiner and is found in different places. But this is from actually chapter 2 of How to Know Higher Worlds. And it will be one of the love assignments for this week. There's two parts to it. The first part is to spend time observing and contemplating something that is growing, living, thriving, such as a living plant. To give your feelings over to this aspect of nature, this quality of nature, something that's growing, living, thriving. And to let those feelings grow within you. Just contemplate it in an undisturbed way for some moments. Let that work upon you. The second part of the exercise is then to observe and contemplate something in nature that is withering, dying, decaying. The opposite end of the spectrum. And again, give your feelings wholly over to this sense of dying of this object that you contemplate with empathy. Let these feelings work upon you. And repeat this exercise. When you repeat it, what happens is you expand your feeling realm in a holistic way. Much differently than contemplating your fellow human being or contemplating the evening news or contemplating the pandemic or anything human related, which can be very complex and confusing. So contemplating something as pure as the cycles of the plant realm will reset your feeling realm. It will recalibrate it and strengthen your ability to have perceptions that are closer to the truth. And doing this exercise with empathy, which is, again, love in action, utilizes the power of love as a medium between ourselves and the outer world. Remembering Steiner's words, only if I love something can it reveal itself to me. And with regards to study, your participation in the School of Love is a form of study, and I hope you are loving it. So your heart is opening to the outer world more as a result. But not only that, is also opening to your own inner capacities that are being let out. And I hope these presentations are inspiring a renewed veneration and reverence for all that there is. Because as the Bible teaches, humility is the beginning of wisdom. To be humble means to get down with the humus, the earth, the humus. Humble and humus come from the same root word. We need to lower ourselves, our egotism, to overcome its inflated tendencies, which is why I can also use the word here, we need to understand. To understand something, we have to stand under it. To understand, we have to stand under it. We have to get under it. We have to lower ourselves. And if we approach something as if we already know it, instead of standing under it, then the door on learning is closed in that moment. That's why I like to make it a practice whenever I meet someone to treat them as if I never met them before, or I'm just seeing them for the first time in a long time, and that I'm getting to know them with fresh eyes, with a fresh mind. This helps to keep the space between us fresh and a sense of wonder and humility alive. It allows for empathy to be the keynote in the meeting. And I encourage you to try that too. It's another one of the love assignments. Whenever you meet someone, even if you've known them for a long time, act as if it's a brand new moment, a fresh slate. You don't actually know them. You don't know what's going on in them. You don't have all those presumptions about where they're at, judgments and so forth, but having it completely fresh and open so that empathy can be the keynote in the meeting. This is why learning and love go hand in hand. To love is to allow something of ourselves to die, so we can take something of the other into ourselves, if only just for a short moment. Even to make a compromise with someone is an act of love, because we're giving up something of our own desire, our own sympathy or antipathy, overcoming our desire realm in order that there may be connection. Otherwise, we would just go our separate ways, which leads to what? More separation. This is why we need to find ways to bring about our own ego death. It is our responsibility to do this for ourselves. And there are innumerable ways to do that. It is largely a matter of being creative. I know ego death sounds like something that's self-destructive, but in fact, it is self-creative. Ego death is not the same as dissolving our ego, which is what the use of some substances will do. We want to bring about ego death so that it can lead to the birth of higher ego functions. It should lead to the strengthening of the ego in a higher sense of the word ego. Remember, the word ego comes from the Latin meaning I. So we are actually giving birth to the higher I. Like the Rastafarians say, I and I. And that I am awareness, which is consciousness, can come into us, which then will lead to an alignment with the consciousness of the universe, which is what we're going to get talking about right now. Here we are in session 4, the midpoint of series 2, and I think it's appropriate that in this center point we're going to focus on the center of centers, the heart. And the title of this session is called The Heart as Central Organizer, Sending and Receiving Information, the connector to the cosmos that created us. I know that sounds like a long title, so I'll probably end up repeating it a few times. But as we begin, rather than dive into the center of the subject, as I'm sure you're getting to know me as a teacher, I like to come at things from different angles, to bring other ideas from the periphery that allow me to slowly build up some other perspectives before tackling the central subject. And in fact, this is in accord with the way the heart itself works, because even though it is the center of centers, it is very much working with things coming and going from the periphery. And not only the warm blood circulating to and from your extremities, but also a multi-levelness of information coming and going, being sent and received, of which the heart, as the center of centers, is the organizer. Thus the title, the heart as central organizer, sending and receiving information. So what do we know about the heart? Really, at best, science can tell us things about it as a material object. Weight, size, some of its functions, as a piece of meat, as one person said. Or it can tell us things about the emotional nature of the heart. But what can we know about our heart as an energetic organ? One of the ways to get to know something better is to not only look at it, but look at where it is, its environment, what surrounds us. So as I stated, instead of starting by looking at the heart directly, we can go at it slowly, working our way into it from the periphery. The heart, as the center of our being, sits between two poles, which altogether make up our threefold being. At the pole above the heart is the brain and nerve sense system. At the pole below, it is the metabolic reproductive limb system. The brain, the top, is the headquarters for the nerve and sensory system and is primarily associated with thinking intelligence. At the opposite end, the metabolic system, comprised of the anabolic and catabolic functions, building things up, breaking things down, the life processes, and also inclusive of the reproductive system, taking care of the reproduction of life processes, and also the limb system, which altogether are associated with the will center of the body. Thinking center, will center. So the heart, sitting in the center of these two poles and integrated with them, is actually a bit of both. The heart includes a bit of both poles as it sits in the center. On the one hand, the heart is a muscle, like contained in the limb system, contracting and expanding from before birth until it finally rests at death. The heart also has endocrine functions, excreting hormones, so it's considered part of the gland system. It's also involved with the movement of nutrition and waste in the body, both anabolic and catabolic, so it's part of the metabolic system. And we know also the role that desire plays in reproduction, and so we could say that the heart plays a part in the reproductive system. On the other hand, science has discovered that the heart has its own independent nervous system. This should be no surprise. We've been referring to the threefold intelligence of our being: head intelligence, gut intelligence, and heart intelligence. The heart has its own complex nerve sensory system, sometimes referred to as the brain in the heart. There are at least 40,000 neurons, nerve cells, in the heart, rivaling some centers of the brain. At first, scientists thought this was just so that the brain could send signals to the heart, helping the heart to function, telling it what to do, keeping it pumping as a supposed pump. But in fact, they've discovered some astonishing things, including that this is a two-way conversation between the heart and the brain, and that the two don't necessarily respond or agree with each other, because they really are two distinct systems of intelligence. And the negotiating and even sometimes negating of each other shows that they're much more than just mechanical throbs of a mechanical pump. but the heartbeat and the signals is an intelligent language that, quote, an intelligent language that significantly influences how we perceive and react to the world, to quote the HeartMath Solution Research, where I got some of this inspiration. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the heartbeat itself, which has been assumed for several centuries to be regulated by the brain, the heart doesn't need a hardwired connection to the brain to keep beating. For example, when someone has a heart transplant, the nerves that run from the brain to the heart are severed, and surgeons don't yet know how to reconnect this. But that doesn't stop the heart from functioning. After surgeons have implanted the new heart and restored its beat in a new person's chest, the heart keeps beating, even though there's no longer a connection to the brain. So this raises the question, what actually moves the heart? The logical conclusion is that the source of the heartbeat is within the heart itself, which is the current scientific view. But when we turn to the work of Rudolf Steiner, his view is different. He says that it is the blood that moves the heart, and not the heart that moves the blood. It's another assumption of so-called settled science. This really does a 180 on the standard definition of the heart as a simple muscle acting as a pressure pump to pump the blood throughout the body. But this is actually a backwards viewpoint. The momentum of the blood is that of a self-propelled organism. The momentum of the blood is that of a self-propelled organism with its own organic form, that of a vortex. This should be no surprise either, as vortex movement is, in my opinion, the signature movement of the entire universe. Everything moves in some variation of this fundamental form, spiraling vortex. When I was body surfing in the Pacific, the waves of the ocean were a sideways vortex caused by the push of the surf on the surface and the undertow of the undercurrent working in dualistic opposition. And this vortex movement has come to rest in everything physical, from the form of a pine cone to the subtle shape of your bones. And the blood that is generated in your bones then moves in a vortex spiral throughout your body, reaching every corner of your body with this fundamental creative gesture of energy, the spiral. It's all about the energy. And so, what is the heart's function as an energetic organ in all of this? Well, the heart too has a subtle spiral shape, and thus supports the blood's vortexing movement. There's now water activation devices on the market that work on this simple principle to cause a vortexing motion of the water, which in turn structures the molecular nature of the water in an ordered way. Water is very malleable as a medium and has capacity for memory, not dissimilar to digital mediums that we're working with every day. Water can carry and store coded information. And blood, as a fluid, is made up of over 90% water, and its properties are subject to these same influences. There have been studies of heart transplant patients who, after they receive the heart transplant from a donor, start experiencing the memories of the donor, their desires, their sympathies, their antipathies. Blood, like water, is an impressionable memory storage medium, among all the other things it's capable of as an organism unto itself. And so why is it necessary to keep blood spiraling inside the body? Because the body lives with the spiraling gesture of everything in the universe. And in fact, the real source of the spiraling of the blood is the universe, not the heart. The heart, bless it, with its intelligence, is a supporting memory in keeping the inner universe of the body in tune with the outer universe. As the alchemist credo goes, as above, so below. So the flow in the body is actually coming from beyond the body. And we can see this from the very inception of the human zygote. The human zygote, as it evolves in the womb, it is the blood that starts moving even before the heart is formed. And this is long before the brain has even made an appearance. We might say it is from the mother that the flow originates, coming from the periphery and eventually building up the center. Eventually, a heart center coagulates and begins its vortex pulsing as a response to the movement of the blood. The mother's womb is certainly acting as a microcosmic environment, a mother matrix in which the physical embryo forms. But it is actually a much bigger picture than that. We know that from Series 1 that the ultimate destiny of the planet is the emergence of the universal human in the one body of love. And so this tiny little physical embryo is part of this planet, but is in fact growing in the womb of the entire universe. Not just the womb of the mother, but it is a product of the womb of the entire universe, or what some people sometimes refer to as the Yoniverse. It is currents from the entire universe, mediated by the stars and the planets, which are also coagulations of energy themselves, like the heart, which is making it similar to the heart, because the heart is a coagulation of energy. But the blood that is moving is more than blood. What is it that characterizes the blood? The warmth in it. The warmth in it, which makes us warm-blooded creatures. Warmth. Which takes us back to the beginning of everything, and to what I taught in the beginning of Series 1, about everything originated with warmth, a primeval warmth. And we must remember, when we talk about warmth, there are three kinds of warmth. They are distinct but also interdependent. We're all familiar with physical warmth, and we can measure physical warmth. We can measure the warmth of the blood. But there are other octaves of warmth that cannot be measured by any instrument other than perhaps ourselves. This is the warmth that is the original warmth that created everything and is still present and mediated by the blood in the body. So, as a side note, we should note that it is true that the warmth in the body is actually produced by the lower pole, the metabolic region, the anabolic and catabolic processes of the body. But this is just a physical warmth, which is important because it works as a medium for the higher octaves of warmth, the original creative primeval warmth. And we need this creative warmth circulating from the periphery of the universe to the heart, just as the warm blood circulates from the periphery of the body to the heart. Here we have the big picture and the localized picture working side by side. Maybe I should repeat that. We have the physical blood and the physical warmth circulating from the periphery of the body, from the tissue, from the cells, from the epidermis. But then we also have the original warmth circulating from the periphery of the universe, coming and circulating in the body as well. Both mediated by the same heart. Both mediated by the same heart. And this points to the multiplex, multitasking, marvelous heart, which is anything but a pump. It is, as the title of this session states, the central organizer, sending and receiving information, connector to the cosmos that created us. The heart is as much an energetic organism as it is a physical organ. As a physical organ, it is a muscle, which in the limb system is what acts as a connector. muscles act as connectors. And that's one of the functions of the heart on an energetic level. Connecting us to the cosmos that created us. And if we consider the other location of the blood's travels to the lungs, where it gets a little taste of the outside world, blood gets a little taste of the outside world when it goes to the lungs, you might then imagine the blood is moving in a route similar to an infinity symbol, a figure eight. Comes from the body, goes to the lungs, back to the body, to the lungs, moving in this infinity figure eight gesture, which is another variation on vortex motion. You can feel that as you draw it in the air. On the physical level, the heart is really everything. It's muscle, a limb, a gland, a metabolic organ, a brain, and an organ of sensory perception. It mediates the blood that is actually pumped not by it, but to it from the periphery, physically by the subtle pumping activity of the cells. The cells at the periphery are actually pumping the blood to the heart, sending the blood through the capillaries, which are extremely narrow, where the pressure causes the blood to scoot along until it joins with other blood in increasingly larger veins until it reaches the heart, where what happens? The blood is actually stopped. Yes, the heart actually stops the flow of blood momentarily. It's incredible. Even though we associate the heart with its relentless beating from womb to tomb, the characteristic of the heart is paradoxically dualistic. That is to say, it is a place of motion, but it is also a place of rest. It is a place of motion, and it is also a place of rest. The blood momentarily comes to rest at the periphery of the body, for one thing, at the tissue level, and then it comes to rest again at the heart center. It's incredible. The heart stops the blood before it enters the heart chambers, which points to another amazing aspect of the heart, that the heart is actually hollow. It's hollow. And within this hollowness is an invisible property. This invisible property is the vacuum. The vacuum. The heart works more with the power of the vacuum, which I'll be talking about in the next session. And with the vacuum, this is something that science is speaking more and more of. The vacuum property of outer space and its role in the fabric of space and the movement of objects in space. Well, in a dualistic universe, we have to also consider the power of the vacuum to move things in inner space. Not only outer space, but inner space. And as a side note, we already talked about the power of a question in the session called Love is Listening, the power of the question. A question has a vacuum property that wants to be filled. A question wants to be answered. And the vacuum of the hollowness of the heart also wants to be filled. But as an energetic organ, that is not only about moving blood of the body, it's also about moving the energy of the universe. Think of this. The blood moves from the periphery of the body, partly because of the pumping action of the cells, but also because of it's hungry for more oxygen. So states Rudolf Steiner, that the blood is hungry for more oxygen. There is a hunger in the blood for more oxygen, nutrients, etc., that will feed the overall physical organism. And this idea of hunger is an interesting one and an important one, because it brings us back to the subject of desire, which we keep bringing up over and over again. It was introduced in the first session, and we keep coming back to the power of desire. Well, hunger is a manifestation of desire. And desire, desidere, means of the stars. The hunger in the blood is really originating in the desire that was implanted in us by the cosmos that created us as part of the planet. And everything carries this desire. You, me, you can see it in animals. It's in their blood too. And you can even see it in plants. But in plants, it's a very pure expression of desire. So the desire in the blood is not just a physical expression, but we could say it is also a metaphysical level to it as well. And this is in the heart and blood as an energetic expression. The heart and blood has this hollowness, this vacuum, this desire, this hunger is an energetic expression as well. And what is this an expression of? What is this desire for? Well, ultimately, for connection with the entire universe, where the desire came from. It came from the universe, it circulates through us, this hunger, and then it returns to the universe and hopefully takes us with it. Which is why the heart is this central organ that is a connector to the cosmos that created us. And the circulation is more than just within the confines of the body. On an energetic level, it expands out to the furthest reaches of the universe, all via the powers of the heart. Because everything in the universe is ultimately connected. As one of my teachers, Rene Carrito, used to say, everything is connected to everything else, and vice versa. Everything's connected to everything else, and vice versa. This now brings us to the expanding and contracting of the heart. What is that about? Is it just about pumping blood? Well, no. We've already stated, according to Steiner, the heart does not move the blood, it is the other way around. The blood moves the heart. And this is seen from the very beginning in the embryo, where the blood is moving on its own accord as its own living, energetic organism. And we know blood is living. It has a life of its own, so it can move on its own accord, not unlike a snake moves on its own. But in the case of blood, it is an expression of the movement of the universe. One could even call it the warm will of the universe, which in turn moves the heart. And so the heart contracts and expands because that's what the universe does. The heart is a microcosmic reflection of the movement in the universe. Science, not so many decades ago, determined that the universe is in a state of expansion based on numbers that were gained through observations made using the Hubble telescope. Since then, there has been more data to challenge this so-called settled science. In fact, not all scientists agree on the idea of a Big Bang theory and that we are currently living in an expanding universe, which will one day contract, implode, and end it all. I believe that in the duality of the universe, there is the qualities of expansion and the qualities of contraction simultaneously. In a transcendental sense of time, non-linear time, both expansion and contraction are taking place in the universe at the same time. And we experience this in the core of our being, in our heart, in linear time, with one beat at a time. Expansion, then contraction, then expansion, then contraction, one after another. Whereas the eternal universe contains both in the eternal moment. Paradoxically, with all the motion that takes place in our lives, including the constant beating of your heart, you can also experience the still point of the universe, a transcendental, eternal point of stillness, where contraction and expansion are simultaneously happening. Think of it. In the University of Duality, what is the opposite of movement? Stillness. And so stillness is a part of our nature too. The heart stops the movement of blood momentarily, for it to come to rest, stillness, before the next movement, the next contraction and expansion and rush of energy. So at the center of your heart is a quiet, still place. And you can tune into it because it is there between the beats, in the interlude between movements. We can tune into it and we can cultivate it. We can cultivate it because it is within our power and purpose to do so. And this is actually the subject of this book I have been reading by a Steiner-inspired writer called The Quiet Heart. We can work with this inherent still point within us. Because when we transcend the dualistic dynamics of the universe, and we transcend expansion and contraction, we will find there is an eternal stillness. And we will be done with the pursuit of holy knowing because we will be whole. And this will happen not because it will be done to us, and not because we do it ourselves, but because we work together with the cosmos, connected to the cosmos that is creating us. It will take our thinking and brain power, and it will take our muscles and willpower. But it will revolve around the heart, which is an incredible masterpiece at the center of your being, which is a bit of brain and it's a bit of muscle. In fact, it is an unusual muscle because the type of muscle it is known as striated muscle. Striated muscles in the body are voluntary muscles, not involuntary. It is a muscle that can be activated by your own will. We've become accustomed to thinking of the heart as an involuntary muscle, which just does its thing, a dumb pump dictated to by the brain. But the heart doesn't need the brain in order to do its thing. And it's a voluntary muscle, which means it can be activated with consciousness. This idea may take some time to get used to, but this is no doubt the way of the future. And it's clear we are not finished evolving. And as we involve new things while also devolving other things in our forward evolution, there are going to be changes and upgrades to the heart, which will apparently require the involution of an additional chamber at some time in the future, according to Rudolf Steiner, that the heart will develop a fifth chamber. Now, it's something exciting to look forward to. And if this has turned your image of the heart on its head, good. Because most things in this world are upside down and backwards. And a lot of our work in this world is about turning things inside out and finding out what they're really all about. This is the only way we're going to manifest the unmanifest. To manifest the unmanifest. And this is the reason for the seeming pumping action of the heart. To bring the unmanifest into manifestation. It's why the heart stands in the middle. In the middle between the one pole, the metabolic section, which does the work to produce substance for manifestation, the building material for the manifest realm. And at the other pole, the brain, through its constant dealing with choices, determines how the material produced by the metabolic pole is used, how to bring it into form. So we have one job happening at one pole and another job happening at another pole. But one thing is missing in the equation. What's that? Movement. There needs to be movement in order for something to be brought into manifestation, for material to be brought into form. And that movement is another one of the heart's offerings, as it works away as the mediator in the middle between the production of substance and the determination of form. The heart and lungs, in their tireless motion, are the rhythm section of the orchestration of manifestation. Let me say that again. The heart and lungs in their tireless motion are the rhythm section of the orchestration of manifestation. The heart-lung combo, motion, provides the movement to take the substance which is produced by one pole, the metabolic pole, and given direction by the other pole, the computations of the brain, and moved into manifestation. And this motion of the heart is carried to it not only by the blood in the body, but the lifeblood of the universe. The cosmic motion, as Rudolf Steiner refers to it, cosmic motion, is brought to the heart by the cosmic lifeblood of the universe. And in a wonderfully mysterious way, this cosmic motion of expansion and contraction is the fundamental action that produces the spiraling motion of life. It is not a pumping action going on in your heart, but rather your heart allowing the inherent motion, cosmic motion of the universe to land, to ground, to manifest and become present in you as a human. And the expanding and contracting of the universe, replicated in the heart, produces the spiraling motion that allows the creation of a manifestation. And ultimately, this cosmic motion is the environment of development for the manifestation of the universal human. The cosmic motion is like a rocking mother, lovingly humming to her child, that the universe may work its way in from the outside to the inside, so it can come from the inside back to the outside, fulfilling the desire of the universe and bringing us to a place of stillness and rest within us, you and me. Now, some may say, do I really want the universe inside me? Is the universe really alive? It doesn't appear to be alive. There's no smiling face in the sky looking down at me, waving with a friendly gesture. I don't know if I want the universe coming into me. But it's not unlike what Jesus meant when he said, "He who has seen me has seen the Father." He was making the unmanifest manifest. By looking into the human face of Jesus the Christ, one could see the face of God made manifest. One could see the eyes of God looking back. One could see the ears of God listening. The expression of God in the human face of Jesus the Christ. The unmanifest in the face of the manifest. And where is this Christ nature now? Well, in you and me. It is in us, at least in seed form, in this seed of love that we've been talking about. But like any seed, it is not destined to remain a seed. It is destined to bloom, right? The planet. And in this case, the seed of love is destined to bloom into what is sometimes called Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness, what is that? It is just to say a consciousness that is held, carried, conducted with love. And this is something we can do. As the Christ said, the things that I do, you shall do also. And so we can be the presence of the unmanifest in the manifest. This is all part of the planet, which I'll look at in the next session, entitled Love is an Intercessory Presence. Session 5 is called Love is an Intercessory Presence. A lot of it depends on what we do with our desire and how we hold it with love. Do we practice the 4 Ds? Rather than waiting for desire to direct us, we direct our desire by making first a decision, then letting the desire work to move us in the direction of that decision, then working with the details to make it manifest, then finally receiving the delivery. And proving you are becoming a master of time and space. So in the next session, we'll be looking more at how to bring down the goods, quite literally, and how love can guide us as a cognitive force that will help us to learn the ways of the universe, to live in accord with the planet. Love is listening. Love is learning. And where you find love, you will find a heart. Because love does not exist without the heart of a lover. The heart holds our love, and it holds us, the core of our being. The heart is the keeper of our essence. And your heart is a center of the universe with powers and a purpose to fulfill. So keep your heart filled, but not too filled. Filled with questions to act as a vacuum for answers as we live in the realm of riddles, which helps us to connect to the source of solutions. And that's where we're going next time.